G'day, Tiny here from Offtap Brewing. This is video number 2 of Beginner Brewing Series. It's only early, so it's coffee. Okay, I was reading the instructions on the tin and they said put tin in pot of water, in hot water, and let it stand to loosen contents. It also said thoroughly clean all your brewing equipment. So I haven't cleaned my spoon. I will do that before I use it. I've got an urn boiling outside, so I'll just dip that in there and it'll be clean. The things I'm going to be needing: the yeast that was under the cap. I don't need the cap, but I just keep the yeast in the cap, because if I'm doing 2 brews at the same time, I know which was which. I can label them or whatever if they're 2 different brands. I need my goo, and I need my fermenter, which I've washed out with boiling water. The steam's all gone, so that's okay. Alright, for today's purpose I'm going to be using a brew blend, which is blended sugars. It's got light malt extract in it to give it a richer taste, and it's also got powdered corn syrup in it, which is a non-fermentable. Pardon me. It will increase your original gravity as normal, but it won't come down as far, so your brew will be a little bit thicker, have a bit more mouthfeel in it, and it will be it'll have a bit of head retention. So brew blends are good. I do recommend starting off with just a plain dextrose, just so you can tell what that's going to do. You know, if you start with your plain dextrose, that'll ferment out 100%. Do your first beer like that, and see how that behaves up against your second beer with a brew blend, if you wish. Okay, pair of scissors, no scissors. I'll use a knife to cut this bad boy open. I'm going to go ahead and tip that straight in. I tip the sugar in first, because once you start putting hot stuff in there, it then becomes hard to get the sugar out of the bag, and all the stuff sticks. So I put my dry powder in first, and large powders, in they go. Always make sure that your tap is in the off position and you've tested it for leaks first. So you put hot water in it and you've let it sit, no leaks under the tap. That's very important also. Now I've had my tin sitting in the water. We then open the tin. Now this is a hopped extract kit, so I don't have to add anything in the way of hops to this. I like to leave a little tag on there, so that sits like that, and when I pour that in, I can lock that down on that lid like that. That tag sits on the handle part of my fermenter if you're using a plastic fermenter, and that'll just drain in. Okay, I'm going to go and sanitize my spoon, really this time. Okay, the spoon is sanitized in the hot water. Now, the tin says, a lot of tins have very generic sort of instructions on them. I've opened this one from the bottom, so that's going to make it difficult. Stand in water for 10 minutes, dissolve the can in 1 kilo of brewing sugar, and then add water. What we want is your fermenter would have come with a little sticky thermometer, or get yourself a thermometer. In winter here it gets cold enough to brew. We don't want, even though the tin says it can withstand up to 28 degrees, we don't want it to be at 28 degrees all the time because it'll taste feral. We want it to be around the 18 to 24 mark. Closer to 18 the better. That will increase your fermentation time, but it will result in a much cleaner fermentation. I'm just going to rinse this out with some hot water, and then I'm going to add water straight from the tap, because as I said, I don't want to pitch my yeast very high at all. So yeah, without further ado, let's start washing that up. Some people like to soak their labels off, so they've got a record of what they're brewing. Not me. Now some of the tins do say use boiling water to do that. 2 tins, tasty, sticky and tasty. Some say use 2 tins full of boiling water to do that. But if that's going to bring your temperature up around the 28-30 degree mark, well then that's too much. You want to have some ice on hand. A bag of ice in the freezer, some ice cube trays, just to plop in there and bring your temperature back down to a suitable pitching temperature. Okay, let's fill it with water. As I said, just cold water out of the tap. Okay, a lot of that's bubbles. That'll soon rise as the bubbles sort of settle out of it, but I never fill it all the way because I want to check my temperature. If I need to add some boiling water, I'm going to add some boiling water to get my temperature up if it's down below the 2018 mark. If it's up to the 28 mark, I want to add some ice cubes to bring it down. So I always leave myself some headroom to adjust the temperature. And as you can see on there, it's 24 degrees. So I'm happy with that because it is winter, so my outside temperature isn't that cold anyhow. Isn't that hot anyhow. So when I pitch my yeast, it's going to increase a little, but the ambient temperature of the room and the tiles I'm going to put it on are going to keep the temperature down to a nice level. You know, if you live in very cold climates, then increase your pitching temperature. The yeast will take over and keep some temperature in it. If you live in very hot climates or hot days, well, bring your pitching temperature down low. Okay, I'm happy with where that's at, temperature and stir wise, so let's fill it up and add the final part. Okay, before we pitch the yeast, I'm going to take a hydrometer reading. So I've got my hydrometer tube that my hydrometer came in. Ah. Okay, next part is the all-important starting gravity. To work out our alcohol content, we need to know where our beer started, how much sugar is in the mix. So I've taken a sample via my spigot into the container that my hydrometer came in. So I'm going to drop that down in there. Hopefully it's not going to overflow. Okay. A few bubbles in there. We always just give it a bit of a spin just to keep the bubbles off it to get a proper reading. And that one, I'm going to hold it steady. That's about 1050. So we write that down somewhere. And I always recommend tasting the product every step of the way. Very sweet, very malty. The next time we taste that, it'll have alcohol in it. Next stage, we add our yeast. There are several ways to do this. As a beginner, and especially if this is your first brew, and you've got your temperature right, I recommend just opening it, tipping it on the top. We'll have a look at rehydrating yeast and creating yeast starters in other videos. But I don't want to bamboozle you with too much info. So all we're going to do for this one is let's cut the yeast open. Just going to sprinkle it on top. I'm not going to stir it. I'm not going to put anything else in there at this stage. That's it. That's all we're going to do. Okay, the yeast is pitched. I'll give you a look at what that looks like. Now, let's rip the camera off. We'll go in. That's the yeast pitched. That's all I'm going to do. I do no more to that. I'm not going to get fancy. This is my first brew. This is our first brew. Together. Alright, so on okay, on goes the lid. And put some water in the airlock. Some people put vodka, some people put sanitizer. I don't, I just put water out of there. And that's fine. Now, where are we going to put this in the house? I'm not going to ferment this in fancy fridges or anything. I'm just going to ferment it on the floor. But I will keep an eye on it for the temperature. And all that sort of stuff as well. So I'll keep a constant eye on it. Just make sure we're not going to go down too low. If we go down too low, the yeast goes to sleep. If we go too high, the yeast just goes nuts and starts doing some crazy stuff in your beer. Alright, I've gone searching. I found a part of the house which I think is going to stay at a reasonable constant temperature. I'm going to go and place it there. Okay, the reason I chose that spot was because I'm going to constantly walk past it. It's not in my way, but I'm constantly going to walk past it, so it's in my face to check it all the time. My recommendations for placement of your fermenter is somewhere it's going to keep reasonable consistency in the temperature. So not extreme cold, not extreme hot during the day. Being winter here, that's a good place for me because I'm going to get the nice warm sun in the morning, it's gone in the afternoon, and the chill of the night should keep it down to, I want it down to about 20 degrees, to be honest, in there. Okay, we'll get back when it starts fermenting. If it hasn't started fermenting in 12 hours, then we're going to give it a little stir up and get it moving. But I did pitch that yeast on that foam, so it should start pretty quickly. Within probably 8 hours, I think we should see bubbles in there. Alright guys, thanks for watching.